the third week of 3 weeks that I'm doing here at the Bristol Buddhist Centre. I live just up the road, and in the first week, I suggested that the current climate and ecological emergency has a spiritual dimension. We can see it as a crisis of empathy. By empathy, I mean our ethical imagination, our ability to imagine the impact of our actions and our collective actions on, for instance, the inhabitants of low-lying Pacific Islands. We also explored the parable of the burning house from the White Lotus Sutra, and as a way of helping us to think creatively about our current predicament. If you remember Greta Thunberg saying in about 2019, I want you to act as if the house is on fire, because it is. And it happens that there's a parable in the Buddhist text about a burning house, and how do you get people out of a burning house when they don't realize it's burning? So we explored this parable as a way of thinking creatively about our current predicament. In particular, what could be our cry of inspiration? What kind of inspiring message could we send to people who are stuck inside the burning house, not even realizing it's on fire, but would inspire them to get out of the burning house to leave it? And I suggested that we can draw inspiration from the truth of interconnectedness, especially the image of Indra's net, which is an image of interconnectedness and mutual causation on a grand scale. Indra's net is an ecological restatement of the Buddha's teaching of how things arise independent of conditions. And we saw that this image can apply directly to our current climate and ecological emergency. Last week, we looked at fire alarm psychology. So what do we do when we hear the fire alarm? Well, we remembered, or we kind of clocked that people often just sit around and wait for someone to move. So there's a psychological aspect here of the fire alarm. We also explored touching the earth in a very bodily way, a grounded way. And we explored the basis of Buddhist environmental ethics, which I won't recap now. I think there's a recording of the previous weeks, is that right? Yeah. Yeah, okay, so you can have a look. And we also explored how and why I wrote this book, The Burning House, a Buddhist response to the climate and ecological emergency. And we explored how to work with overwhelm, fear, despair, depression, and anxiety that are likely to arise if we actually face up to what's going on. This week is our final week in this mini-series. And topics for this week are climate comedy, anger, grief, gratitude, non-violent social change, and an evocation of the Buddhist Pure Land with an ecological twist. So that's the menu for this week. So we'll start with climate comedy. So when I was writing the book, I had a lot of jokes about the climate and the ecological emergency. And I thought, I'm just going to write them down. I'm just going to write this chapter. I'm pretty sure Windhorse Publications will not publish this chapter. So I'm pretty safe in writing whatever I want to write. And I just sort of let rip for a whole chapter. And I loved it. I had great fun writing this chapter. And I sent it off to Dharma Mega at Windhorse Publications. And she wrote back, it's wonderful, it's great, it's wonderful. And all the other chapters had all sorts of corrections and amendments and revisions. In this chapter, almost none, I can tell you. So that was some kind of dream of writing, of being a writer. When you send off a chapter, it doesn't get any revisions whatsoever. Anyway, so when we're dealing with existential threats, it's very easy to lose our sense of humour. And a sense of humour is crucial because it can help us to connect to a bigger perspective. So how might humour help us to voice our fears and to allow things to settle on a deeper level? So this is the question I asked at the start of the chapter. Bearing in mind, what is funny about ecological Armageddon? Well, we have to go right back to when we were kids in the playground and we're laughing at ghouls and ghosts and sort of things that go bump in the night. Yeah? So let's go there. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Ecological Armageddon.
Ecological Armageddon.
Ecological, I'm getting out of here. All right. Okay, so ecological Armageddon is no laughing matter, clearly. And this puts me in a very awkward position. Like the climate and ecological emergency, I'm faced with impossible odds. In fact, last week, somebody accused me of recycling jokes. I'll try that one again. Last week, somebody accused me of recycling jokes. I mean, I tell you, instead of just throwing them away. Joking aside, have you found it difficult to introduce the climate and ecological emergency in everyday conversation? I mean, I do try and bring it up every once in a while. So here's how it usually goes. Your friend says to you, I'm going to pick up the kids from school and I'm taking the car. You say, the climate is going to hell in a handcar and you're driving a mile to pick up the kids. And your friend says, I'm going to pick up the kids, all right? It might rain. And that's usually the end of the conversation. Okay, so maybe that goes slightly differently around in the woods, but that's the kind of conversation that I used to have. So actually, I did find a way of bringing in the climate and ecological emergency into everyday conversation, quite by chance one day. It happened by accident. The same friend asked me, she said, where are you going for your holidays? And I said, just flippantly, I said, well, we're going to Antarctica. We're going to Antarctica. Gesina and I are going to Antarctica to see the penguins. And she said, wow, that's pretty cool, Antarctica. And I said, not as cool as it used to be. Now you can take that joke on several different ways, but I'll let you go now. Okay. You know, in the end, us Buddhists, you know, if anybody, us Buddhists are the ultimate recyclers. Yeah? We have it written into our religion, into our tradition. I mean, we've got karma. What goes around comes around, kind of recycling, and rebirth, because some jokes just keep coming back. So, if that's not funny enough, let's talk about anger. Well, actually, no, let's just take a little pause before we go on. So comments in the chat, if you any responses to that. So we'll just pause before I start talking about anger. It's a bit too fast to demonstrate. So what comes up for you when you hear this about climate comedy and the importance of having a sense of humour? So maybe just take a moment just to reflect. Or indeed, just how are you feeling now? Any brief responses? How are you feeling now, or kind of what comes up to you? Reflections on this section?
Well, I like dark humor, gallows humor very much indeed. I think it doesn't necessarily, denigrate and deny the seriousness of the issue.
Yeah.
It's a way of, in a sense, defining it.
Yeah.
Standing up to it, saying that, there's reasons to be scared, but we're not going to be terrified into that inaction.
Yeah. So there's something about acknowledging that it's even a way of acknowledging our fears in a certain kind of way. It's a kind of more subtle way of just acknowledging our fears. Yeah, perhaps hopefully a creative way. Yeah.
Generally, with humour, you can get a lot closer to the bone.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
And people will stay, well, I will, I'll stay
Yeah.
a little bit more open, because there's like this lightness that's
Yeah,
injected.
that's it. Yeah.
And that
yeah,
allows me to go a bit closer to the painful truth. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think
Yeah.
humour's a gift in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can get closer to the bone and people will still stay with you because there's something light and humorous about it as well. Yeah. I love that. Thank you. Yeah, so a friend of mine who does climate comedy, he's a professional comedian, and he said to me, well, wherever there's tension, there's humor, okay? And there's a hell of a lot of tension in the climate and ecological emergency. So you just need to find that edge where you can, where there's some humor and lightness in there as well. Yeah, everybody knows there's a tension. Yeah. Humour is a good way of making a point, says Debbie. Taranita says, in the darkest moments of my life, there has still been humour. It helps. It certainly does. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, online people. Okay, so talking about tension, I'd like to move on to anger. So I said last week I'd talk a bit about anger. Now, I don't know about you. Well, who or what do you get angry about in relation to the climate and ecological emergency? Well, I'll tell you my list. Politicians, businessmen, loggers. So who do you feel angry in relation to? Are there particular people or particular groups of people? So just call out, and answers in the chat if you want to join in, people online. Who do you get angry in relation to? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're a really cool Buddhist and you don't get angry about anything ever. Maybe.
Climate change deniers.
Wait a minute. Climate change deniers over here. Yes.
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. Okay, shooting off into space. Okay.
It's only possible to get angry at myself.
You can get angry at yourself. Okay, some people are good at that, getting angry with yourself. Yeah. Anybody else?
I guess I get angry about people who don't care about anything, that
Okay.
they business as usual or throwing things on the street or even in nature.
Yeah, so people don't seem to care, or you're telling yourself they don't care. Yeah. So Buddhaghosa, the famous 5th century Buddhist commentator, he is now, compared anger to a person picking up a burning ember or excrement in order to throw it at another person. Whether or not you hit the other person, they burn themselves or they make themselves stink. So that is the traditional Buddhist image for anger. However, is it really like that? I'd like to suggest that it's important to distinguish between anger on one hand and hatred. Anger can have a protective function, or it may simply be a sudden release of frustrated energy. Hatred, on the other hand, is a desire for another person's suffering, a desire for them to suffer. By definition, it's unwholesome, in the sense that it will lead to suffering for oneself and for others. So hatred attaches us to our enemies just as strongly as craving attaches us to whatever we're craving. You know? It's just as strong, that sense of attachment, or perhaps even stronger. So for me, it helps to distinguish between anger and hatred. And this is a traditional distinction as well. My question is, how do we find the life in our anger? The key to this, and most of self-development, is in developing awareness. Awareness brings increased choice and freedom. If we become aware of the choices that we're making as we act, as we go through the day, as we go through our days, this opens up the possibility of choosing differently in the future. If we're not really aware of the choices that we're making, we're unlikely to find a different choice, to discover different choices, or even imagine different choices. So let's do a little guided reflection. So You can close your eyes for this if you like. So the eyes open or closed, as you wish. So recall an aspect of the climate and ecological emergency that stimulates anger. For instance, a photo of the rotting carcass of a dead whale with plastic, kilos of plastic in the stomach. Once you've brought this image to mind, stop and breathe. And get in touch fully with what you're feeling in your body. Notice what you feel and where in your body. Maybe there's heat in the stomach or chest, or shoulders. Maybe the hands, maybe the fists are clenching. Maybe there's a kind of pushing forward, tension in the forehead, jaw. Notice what you're feeling, sensing what you're feeling in your body. And when you're ready, listening compassionately for the thoughts associated with these feelings. So what are you telling yourself? Or maybe they shouldn't, or people shouldn't, or should, or and when you're ready, get in touch with what you're longing for behind these thoughts. So what are you longing for? What are you really longing for in this situation? Are you longing for protection? Protect what you love? Care for the earth? Maybe some acknowledgement or awareness of the beauty and richness of the natural world. Some awareness of actions, how actions have consequences. Getting in touch with the value or the Buddha quality behind these thoughts, this thinking. And notice that when you're fully in touch with this, with your value or with the Buddha quality, the story drops away and you no longer feel angry. In fact, sad or in mourning. If you feel a new surge of anger, go round again, sensing the feelings, listening to the thoughts, and then connecting with the underlying values. And when you're settled in this transformed feeling, make a request. Imagine a next step that you could take to meet this need or this value that you've identified. Whether it's care for the earth, awareness, sense of beauty or protection, whatever it is. So when you're ready, opening your eyes, looking around. So what value or Buddha quality did you connect with? People online, also, if you'd like to join in here, maybe just a sentence or a couple of sentences, and I'll read them out. What value or what Buddha quality did you connect with? Let's guide your reflection. Bimala Bhattacharya online says, respect for the natural world. So respect, respect. There's a lot in that word, respect, isn't there? Consideration, care, valuing. Debbie says the need to protect. Yeah, so protection. Again, there's a lot in that, sort of protecting what you value, protecting what you love. Taranita says, compassion for the world and wildlife. Yeah, so that sense of compassion. And compassion means that when we see suffering, we have the urge to alleviate it, to reduce it. So we acknowledge the suffering, and also there's this impulse to alleviate it, to reduce it in whatever way we can. So anybody here in the room? Yes, Yasmin.
Interconnectedness. And I think when I was feeling the anger, it was in the kind of everything being interconnected and the negative impacts that we can all have. But then when I touched into the kind of more positive side, it was the positive ripples that we can all have and the scale of it.
So interconnectedness in different ways or different aspects. Yeah, just first of all, just acknowledging or being aware that everything's interconnected. Hey, guess what, folks? Everything impacts everything else. Everything, So there's something we talked about in week 2. Yeah. What we put up into the atmosphere in Bristol or wherever pretty soon finds its way around the world. We're in a very real way. We're interconnected. Everything impacts everything else. Somebody else?
Sense of equality came out.
Sense of equality.
Yeah, but between human and species. Because I don't think we get a real strong sense of that. And I guess humans have consciousness. They have this amazing capacity for great compassion and great calm. What we might consider lesser life, with that, actually does a lot less damage. So there's something really tender about that.
Okay. Yeah, so fully valuing other species. Life is valuable as life. We can recognize that. We can see. If we see life, we can. It's valuable as life. Doesn't need to do anything for us or be anything for us. It's just valuable as life. Yeah. So that sense becomes solidarity with the natural world. So and compassion, which arises from that. One more person? One person like to share? Tim?
I think a sense of, because I I've had opportunity without going a million miles to have a sense of immersion in sort of wilderness, sense of wilderness, and sometimes I feel angry because I feel that as my niece and nephew get older, they might not have quite the same opportunities to have the immersion that comes with being in the wilderness, that sort of connection, or the opportunity to have, for them to have children and think their children will be able to do it. I know, but then in terms of how to respond, just maybe go camp, you know, to stay in the connection and sense of immersion myself, and to take them camping, not a million miles away, and show them it's possible to. It's a way of being as well as what's there, you know.
Yeah. So we've had the chance to enjoy the beauty of the natural world and wild places, and yeah, part of enjoying that is also wanting other people to have the same opportunities, the same chance to enjoy the richness and beauty of life without constantly being in kind of fear and anxiety about losing it. You know? So yeah, what we regard as precious is also we want other people to be able to enjoy that, you know, future generations included. Yeah. So there's a lot in there. So this leads me on to my next topic, which is grief. So just a quick poll. Who feels grief about the planet that we're handing on to future generations? So can you raise your hand if you feel some grief about that? Online people also, could I just give a quick poll? Okay, yeah, remember people there. Okay. So the grief may be in a way may be similar to the anger, in the sense that we may feel grief to witness the loss of species, the loss of ecosystems, the loss of natural beauty. And it's worth looking at this grief because anxiety, trauma, overwhelm, and a sense of powerlessness may lead to denial, or at least blocking out the news, or blocking out our awareness of what's going on. And in turn, that will also impair our capacity to act. So it's worth giving this grief some space and some care. And we can create a space for mourning. Now, some of you may be familiar with Joanna Macy and her writing about grief and grief work. Can I just see who's come across this grief work in a Joanna Macy context? Yeah, a couple of people have here, three people online. Oh, okay. So Joanna Macy is a kind of philosopher who talks about Buddhist, or uses Buddhist philosophy in her work as an activist, and she emphasizes the importance of acknowledging our grief for the world, and she suggests simple rituals to do this. Let's just try this now. Let's just try this now with where we are, with the people who are here. So maybe just look in pairs. Maybe just look at somebody in this room in pairs. So if you can just turn towards another person, so it's clear that you're in pairs. Is that going to work? A little bit of shuffling around. Oh yes, we've got an even number in the shrine room. What about online? How are you going to do this online? Could you go to gallery view and just pick another person in gallery view? All right, so here's the thing. Sitting opposite this person, and maybe just look into their eyes. Maybe just take a moment to look into their eyes. Maybe just recognize that they love this world. They love this earth. This person in front of you loves this earth. This world that we're in. Perhaps feel your respect for this person. Maybe bow towards them, just a little bow, just to acknowledge their love for this world, for this earth. You're looking into the eyes of someone who knows well the suffering of the world. They live with that knowledge and they don't look away. They know that the ice caps are melting, the sea levels are rising, the oceans are acidifying, and they haven't let it kill their love of life. Then maybe finish by bowing once more towards that person, that's in front of you, and turning back to the front. So how do you feel now? How do you feel now, having done this little grief reflection, grief exercise? So online people, feel free to respond in the chat. How do you feel? What comes up for you?
Okay. Yeah, something to think about doing in the context of this and climate change. Found grounding. We took brought it home with it because it's like, well, yeah, because of the relational context. It often makes things very real. I don't quite know how to describe that.
Yeah, so it makes it very real because it's in a relational context, and that kind of brings it home.
Yeah.
Deep. Somebody else?
It made me feel like defiant, but like,
Yeah.
gonna get through this somehow, or no matter how bad it gets.
Yeah.
Like,
Right, yeah.
you know, there are gonna be people who are not gonna stop trying.
Ah, okay. So you felt some energy coming up to, to resist, find a way through. I've got over here from Vimla Vadri, delight in the other's humanity. Delight, yes. Mudita, delight, empathic delight. Maybe one more person, how do you feel? Could just be a word. You felt supported. Companionship, yeah.
Kind of felt inspired.
You felt inspired. Okay. So grief is another aspect of compassion. Zen master, poet, and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh was once asked by his students, "What do we need to do to save the world?" It's the kind of question you ask a Zen master. What do we need to do to save the world? And they expected to hear his thoughts on the most effective forms of social and environmental action, offering his famous for engaged Buddhism, promoting engaged Buddhism. However, what he said was this: what we most need to do is to hear within us the sounds of the earth crying. What we most need to do is to hear within us the sounds of the earth crying. In other words, to be aware of, to acknowledge our own grief, our own sense of sadness when we see the impact of human actions on the natural world. And one of the ancient Indian words for compassion is anukampa. So anukampa, usually translated as compassion, but actually what it actually means is trembling with or resonating with. So this is empathy at the level of enlightenment, kind of enlightened empathy, that we tremble with, not in the sense of fear, but we resonate with the experience of all life, of all species. We have a kind of resonance, a bodily resonance with the experience. We feel that sense of connectedness in a bodily way, in a kind of resonant way. Yeah. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's about kind of an implicit or gut sense of connection and belonging. And to illustrate this, I'd like to tell the story of the birth of compassion, or the mythical birth of compassion in the story of Avalokiteshvara. So there was this great meditator in Tibet, as the story goes, and he made a great vow to deliver all the people of Tibet from suffering and to lead them to enlightenment. He swore that he would keep his vow and made a wish that if he hesitated, even for a moment, his head would crack into 10 pieces and his body would split into 1,000 pieces. So he made this great vow. And he went into a cave and meditated, and he entered a great samadhi, a profound meditation on compassion, through which he aimed to lead all beings to enlightenment. After a long period, he emerged from his meditations to find that not even 1/100th of the beings of Tibet, the land of snow, had been helped by his practice. Not even 1%. He was seized by a bitter sorrow and wondered, what is the use? I can do nothing for them. It is better for me to be happy and peaceful myself. Immediately, his head and body shattered into pieces. In his agony, he called out to Amitabha, his presiding Buddha, who came to his aid. Amitabha blessed the shattered fragments and fashioned a new body with 10 heads and 1,000 arms, which could reach out in all directions. Then Amitabha set his own head on top of the new body. In this way, Avalokiteshvara was able to carry on his work of dispelling suffering far more effectively than before. As one person, we can't save the whole world, or even the land of snow, Tibet. However, if we join forces with others so that we become many-headed and many-handed, we have greater capacities and reach. We only need to be a part of that much greater body. So I'll just pause there. Actually, it might be time for a tea break in a moment. So we'll have a break very shortly. What comes up for you when you hear this story? We'll just spend a few minutes with this story. What comes up for you when you hear this story about the birth of Avalokiteshvara, the spiritual birth of Avalokiteshvara? Does it sound familiar? You're thinking, what's all this gobbledygook, all this Tibetan stuff? So answers in the chat, please, and also in the room. What comes up for you? I'm really curious, actually. What comes up?
For me, it's something to do with don't know what we're capable of until we reach our limits.
Yeah.
And some way in reaching our limits, can we actually go beyond them? Yeah. So, yeah, not to be afraid to reach elements, because I think it's a very creative place and place of a lot of possibility.
Yeah,
Anyway, you do have to shatter and die and just be reborn as something new. And something more effective.
I would totally go along with that. The times I've grown the most is when my heart has literally broken open. It's a kind of very physical experience of my heart just shattering and breaking open. And then that allows it to get bigger. I wish it was easier than that. Maybe it is some of the time, but I can say that the most profound experiences I've had in that direction have been that sense of my heart really just breaking open. Lots of tears. But at the same time, that's nothing, for me, I've realized that's nothing to be afraid of, because that's how my heart gets bigger. That's how I get bigger. In particular, I was co-leading a reconciliation event for 100 Israelis and Palestinians in 2011 for 9 days. And during that time, I think I cried every day on that event. And there was one time I was sitting in front of the group, like I'm sitting in front of you. We were having a dialogue, going backwards and forwards. It was very hard. It was really, sometimes we got to some very, very hard places, very, very painful places. And I just started crying. And it's like the floodgates just opened. And I just couldn't stop crying, even if I wanted to, I couldn't stop crying. And in another way, it was fine. It was okay. It was just a natural response. It was just a human response to what I was witnessing and hearing. It was like totally in tune with my surroundings, as it were. And I just looked at somebody. I think somebody came up to me and asked me if I was okay, and I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just crying." And I said, "Can you carry on?" And then they carried on, hosting that group. And I just carried on crying and just cried for as long as I needed. And afterwards, people came up to me and they said, "Thank you very much. Thank you very much for showing your vulnerability, for showing your grief, and being here. It made it easier for them to acknowledge their grief. The fact that somebody who's not so involved could come along and witness and see what they were going through. So there's something about heart breaking open. Taranita says, "I can resonate with it. The feeling of hopelessness, and then the subsequent pain." Yeah, so this is Avalokiteshvara, just like, how can we save all beings? Is that even possible? Yeah. So any further reflections on this before we have a maybe 5-minute tea break?
The language of him sort of breaking open its different heads was interesting, because he didn't break and implode. He broke and open.
Yeah.
And maybe that's to do with where he was placing value, like on broader connection, rather than trying to hold himself together.
Yeah, that's interesting, that symbolism, isn't it? Yeah. I think traditionally his head broke into 10 pieces or 11 pieces so that he could look in all directions, so that he could take in what was going on all around him. And the 1,000 arms, so he could reach out in 1,000 different ways to alleviate suffering. Kazina?
I had a sense of relief. I don't need to rescue the world. I just need to be a part of it.
Yeah.
That is sensing of being a part of something bigger, a bigger body, but the words. And I found there's some, in the exercise before, I noticed some burden. And now I have a sense more of, I don't need to carry this on my own. I can be part of a bigger group.
Yeah, it's a sense of relief. It's like, you don't need to carry the world on your shoulders. We can all be part of something bigger. Yeah, a greater body. Okay, so let's have a 5-minute break. 5 minutes bio break, and we'll come back and And we'll talk briefly about gratitude. And then we'll do a evocation of the Pure Land. 5-minute break. So I'd like to talk a little bit, just briefly, about gratitude, and then do an evocation of a Pure Land, which is a particular kind of sort of ideal Buddhist world, what the world might be like if it was an ideal world for practicing the Buddhism. So first of all, gratitude towards the earth. So gratitude forms the primal movement of many spiritual and earth traditions. It's grounding and strengthening and gives us the sense that we belong here on this earth. And we can tune into it at any time. So with living in cities, not being close to nature and living our lives through technology, we can very easily kind of become disconnected from a sense of from the earth and from a sense of gratitude towards the earth. So I'd like to suggest that we do just a brief guided reflection on gratitude, so gratitude towards the earth. So eyes open or closed as you wish again. And you can just enter this as lightly or as deeply as you like. This is just to explore this area. So I invite you to take a breath. And another. Feel your feet and sitting bones. Feel the ground beneath you and your connection with the earth. Allowing the earth to take your weight. Now ask yourself, what do you love about being on this earth? When did nature stop you in your tracks with its beauty, its abundance, its richness, subtlety or intimacy? Its raw power? When did nature stop you in your tracks? And extending this gratitude to the gift of life, bring to mind a person in your life who helped you to flourish, to thrive, whose love helped you to flourish and thrive. And what challenges have you faced and losses that you've sustained that have given you deeper roots of compassion and self-compassion? When and how has your heart got bigger? So when you're ready, opening your eyes, looking around, taking in the other people in the room. Perhaps we could share some of this gratitude. So, what was it? What did you connect with? What did you really feel great gratitude for? People online, same thing. If you'd like to share in the chat something that you're grateful for, something you really feel a sense of gratitude.
Being part of the great mystery of existence.
Yeah, so being part of the great mystery of existence. Yeah. Yeah, just being part of it. Yes,
I went for a really gorgeous walk yesterday during that rain, sun, and I saw a double rainbow, and I just felt really like floored by the beauty.
You went for a beautiful walk and saw a double rainbow. Yeah. Thank you. And somebody online, Taranita, beauty of the natural world, those moments of awe. Vimlavajri, the crashing of waves, their power. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a kind of picture postcard sunset. It could also be, sometimes just the raw power of nature is also amazing. You spend much time on the sea or on the ocean, you really get a strong sense of that. Or in mountains as well. Somebody else, something you feel gratitude for?
Grateful just for other people.
Yeah, for other people, just grateful for other people, for their presence. Any more for any more? Either online or in person? Perhaps somebody hasn't spoken yet.
Someone not spoken. I find when people give without expecting anything back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of just, I think, because it gives me sort of faith in humanity or something, or it's a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah. So when people give freely, just because they enjoy giving, and they want to give, they want to contribute. That's something very inspiring about that. Yeah. Okay, so let's imagine this Pure Land then. Now we're building up, we're kind of working up to the Pure Land, Buddhist Pure Land. So Pure Land is the ideal conditions for practice, okay? And I'd like to reimagine. So in the book, and at the end of each chapter, I've created a guided reflection, and this is a guided reflection for chapter 12, I believe, chapter 11 or 12. And this is imagining the Pure Land. So the purpose of this guided reflection is to imagine a modern Pure Land. So that is the social conditions that would assist in the growth and development of individuals in ways that don't jeopardize the safety of this and future generations. So again, eyes open or closed as you wish, and you can, as I say, you can go into this as lightly or as deeply as you like. So please feel free just to float if you want. So take a moment to settle into your posture. Allow your mind to settle in your body. And when you're ready, coming into your heart. Can you imagine a world in which the social conditions support the growth and development of the individual? A world in which we relate to each other as individuals rather than through socialized constructs. A world in which we're free to develop to the utmost of our potential. What kind of social, economic, and political structures would help us to do that? Can you imagine a world in which this is happening without jeopardizing the safety of this and future generations? The English poet, engraver, and visionary William Blake gives us a glimpse of such a world when he talks about eternity's sunrise. Can you imagine the sun coming up on eternity? What are the colors? Where are you? Are there other beings present? Which desire did you just transform? And which bliss are you now experiencing? You are in a Pure Land. Millions of rays spring up, intersecting and weaving themselves into incredibly pure and beautiful patterns. Double rainbows appear and disappear. Trees shine and flash as though with strings and nets of multicolored gems. Flowers fall like rain. This is a joyous world, soft and glowing, filled with the music of birds and the tinkling of trees adorned with precious jewels and garlands of golden bells. At the center of this splendor sits the Buddha of the Mahayana, the eternal Buddha. The rays converge into a canopy above his head. His peaceful expression sends out rays of love and compassion in all directions. There are flowers at his feet. His unnumbered audience range in ecstasy and devotion on all sides. You are among this audience. As soon as you even think of something that you need, it appears in front of you. Delicious food, sweet tasting spring water, warm, comfortable shelter. The air has a freshness and perfume to it, like a summer country dawn. Music comes from the ground, sometimes soft and soothing, sometimes vigorous and challenging. Love shimmers in the air. Friends, companions, and lovers appear and disappear as you wish for them. You meditate simply by closing your eyes and crossing your legs. There are endless opportunities for learning and creativity and to contribute to life. No one has power over another. The social and political structures are strictly life-serving. They focus on providing for everyone's needs, giving them as much freedom as possible to express themselves and live their lives according to their own lights, whilst respecting the safety and freedom of others and future generations. Taking carbon out of the ground and putting it into the atmosphere has stopped. Existing forests and other carbon sinks are legally protected and universally cherished. Wetlands are preserved. All energy is renewable. Farming has become more sustainable and less dependent on fossil fuels. Humans are eating a mainly plant-based diet, which has freed up land and resources to protect biodiversity. Breathing in the sweet air of this pure land. Breathing out. Breathing in the perfumed air of this pure land. Breathing out. So that's it for this evening, folks. This mini-series. So if you want to take things further, there are various ways that you could do this. One of them, if you haven't already bought it, you could buy and read my book, The Burning House, A Buddhist Response to Climate and Ecological Emergency. I'm happy to sign some outside. £9.99 to you. You can donate to the Tree Ratna Earth Sangha, which I'm a co-founder of. If you go to the, I think the website, I think the links are on the website now, so you can donate to the Tree Ratna Earth Sangha to support projects and a part-time coordinator. You can get involved in the run-up to COP26 if you're not already, by joining the Tree Ratna Earth Sangha Slack group, which is a very lively group on Slack. Again, links on the website. You can join the Eco Crisis group at this centre. You can, so to do that, you can talk to Kath Dixon or Vimla Badri online, or just ask. Yeah, have a look, or you can just look on the website, on the Bristol Buddhist Centre website, the Eco Crisis group. Finally, if you like this and you want more, you want the extended play, you can. I'm leading an 8-week course online on the Buddhist Centre online, starting on the 16th of October. So that's 8 consecutive Saturday evenings online. And again, the link is on the Bristol Buddhist Centre website. That's it for now. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.